great friend of mine. I'm honored to contribute to his website, which has been around since 1996, and is as informative as any. If you want meat and potatoes and great information, there's no one better than Rodney Orr and TiderInsider.com. Rodney, good afternoon, sir. I know it's a little bit unusual to connect with you with me in the hot seat instead of on in Huntsville. You're on here in Tuscaloosa, but great to speak with you. How are you?
Doing great, Drew. How are you?
Doing good, Rodney. Always great to talk with you. And of course, as we were talking about as we started our show, recruiting never stops for the University of Alabama, and certainly the opening in Frisco, Texas this weekend, especially on Team Hype. A lot of Alabama commitments. I think there's 6 on one team. Could be up to 8 when you think about a couple of guys like Trey Sanders and Jaleel Billingsley and what could happen in the future. But certainly Talia Tungavailoa leading that squad. So a lot of excitement for Alabama fans. But a big piece to the puzzle added yesterday, and I know you were one of the first to report last week on TiderInsider.com that Alabama was definitely heavily in the mix for Keilan Robinson, the running back from the Baltimore, Maryland area. Just tell us a little bit about Keilan Robinson for the listeners in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, I mean, he's a really explosive player, Drew, when you watch his tape. A guy that makes a lot of big plays, very speedy player. He's probably not as big as some of the running backs we've generally seen at Alabama, maybe 5'9.5", 5'10", about 190 or so. So he's not one of the big. He is very, very explosive. You know, again, you hate to make comparisons, I know, but if you just to draw a picture and you look at him, you know, he's a guy that kind of looks like he has a little bit of maybe Kenyon Drake in him, a little bit of maybe Alvin Kamara, because he's so versatile and has such great speed. You know, he can come out of the backfield as a receiver. He can return kicks. He can just do so many different things.
He really can, Rodney. He's impressive on film. From a size standpoint and his stature, he kind of reminds me of former Alabama running back D. Hart, and we know D had a lot of hard injury luck at Alabama that kind of derailed his career, but he went on to have a very good year under Jim McElwain at Colorado State, and I think he was a 1,400 yard per game rusher, and you know what might have been if he could have stayed healthy at Alabama, but regardless, as you said, the young man Keilan Robinson, very explosive, kind of a different style of running back, and a guy that I think Alabama probably feels like can be a real versatile guy that you could put in the slot, that could also return kicks and make plays running the football. Really a versatile kid, Rodney.
Yeah, like I said, I think he's got a little bit of the versatility that we saw. Again, like you said, he's not really as big as Drake, probably not as big as Alvin Kamara was coming out of high school, but you know, he's got a little bit of that versatility in him where he can do all of those things that you said, Drew, kind of a different style of back, change of pace, you know, really explosive, a lot of speed. So you need those kind of players nowadays because they're the guys that can really produce some big plays.
They really are, Rodney. And I was on another radio program earlier this afternoon, and I was talking about kind of the pipeline Alabama's been able to open up in the Baltimore, Maryland area, you know, starting with the Quanjo brothers, Ari and Cyrus, and then, of course, Cyrus Jones, who I still think overall in his body of work in his career, still Alabama, many fans probably don't give him enough credit, or he's probably not as fondly remembered as he should be as a very solid player. Another one that was a very good punt returner by the time of his final season in Tuscaloosa. But, you know, it's been pretty amazing over the last 2 to 3 years to see all the talent, Rodney, that Alabama's been able to mine from that Baltimore, Maryland area.
Yeah, it really is. I think they're going to have a great one this year. Terrell Lewis, he's from that area, out of the Washington, D.C. area. You know, they recruited a guy, Yabi Anoma, out of that area this past year that I think is going to be a great player eventually. They've got some guys committed. You mentioned Keilan Robinson, but also from that Baltimore area, Shane Lee, the linebacker. Help me, Drew. There's somebody else committed from that area, right? From that same area right now.
Yeah,
from the Baltimore area. But you know, again, you're right. There is a you know, kind of a pipeline that's being established there, and I know that they're recruiting the guys from like Hagerstown, Maryland. You know, when you talk about the receiver John Mechie, so they're up there hitting it pretty hard.
Yeah, they really are. They really are hitting it pretty hard, Rodney. There's no doubt about that. And I think, without a doubt, they've opened up a big pipeline there. And Mike Loxley deserves a lot of credit for that. He did a great job recruiting that area. And they also have Trevon Diggs from that area as well. And he's
Right.
from the Maryland area. And I think he has a chance to come into his own this year, Rodney. There's no doubt about it. And I think that's a great point that you made. And then they've offered several 2020 young men as well from the same area. So definitely a chance for Alabama to continue to build it. And then this recruiting class so far, I mean, they've been aggressive. They're already up to 17 commitments, and we know that can change as far as because people want you to always predict the class, but it's really tough to do because there's so many moving parts. But certainly a very, very great, just an outstanding beginning to this group. And Rodney, the young man you were talking about from Hyattsville, Maryland, of course, is DeMarco Helms, who will also be on that team hype from in the Beaverton, Oregon. He's a guy that's probably going to be a safety. So they continue to have good success at DeMatha because that's where the Quanjo brothers came out of there. Marvin Brown years ago. Alabama's had very good luck, and Danny Martz from that program, recruiting solid players from there. But so far, and I wanted to get your thoughts too. I know it's very early, and he's a 2020 prospect. But what was your thoughts on Alabama pulling in the young man from Jacksonville, Florida, the young quarterback this early?
Well, he's a great, obviously he's a great dual sport player, prospect, tremendous baseball player, plays a lot of, like he pitched, he plays field, outfield, catch, do just about anything baseball field. Guy that was originally admitted to Florida as a baseball player, Drew. So he's a very gifted baseball player. You watch his tape. I mean, he looks really good when you watch him slinging the ball around. Does that pretty well. Seems to have a really good grasp of playing the quarterback position. He's got great size. He's listed at 6'4", 225 or so. That's really good size for a quarterback, obviously. So he's got a lot of the tools, no doubt. He's still got some room to get better in terms of. He's only going to be a junior, rising junior this year.
Yes.
So, it's a great prospect, and we're talking about Carson Beck, of course.
Yeah, Carson Beck from the Providence Day School in Jacksonville, Florida. And as Rodney said, since June of 2017, he had been a commitment to Kevin O'Sullivan in Florida baseball. And when you commit that early to Kevin O'Sullivan's program, and with the multitude of first-round draft picks they've turned out, he's a right-handed pitcher and also utility infielder. So certainly he's a very talented guy. So the Major League Draft is going to have to be watched. But I think it's telling of what he thought of Alabama's program, both in football under Nick Saban and what Brad Bohannon's building at Alabama on the diamond, because he was committed to Florida and had just been offered, Rodney, by Dan Mullen and the Florida Gators in football, and yet still flipped to Alabama. From what we understand, put on a show at Alabama's 7-on-7 tournament that was just here this past weekend. So as the dead period was winding down. So Carson Beck, a young quarterback, he's not ranked right now, but as I always tell people, don't get all caught up in rankings and things of that stature, because usually when Nick Saban's evaluated someone, he's done it very thoroughly, and they usually check off most all the boxes.
Right, and also I think that Dan Enos is a quarterback coach. He's really a guru. I think he does an outstanding job. He has a great reputation, a great track record, Drew, developing quarterbacks. I mean, you look at what he did with the Allen brothers up there at Arkansas. Did a fantastic job, and there's no question when he evaluates a guy that he knows what he's looking at. I mean, that's why he's one of the top quarterback coaches in college football.
That's a great point, and I, as I said coming into the show, of course everyone's so excited, and just their appetite's been whetted by what they've seen from Tua Tagovailoa and what he did in of course the national championship game is unprecedented, but even before that, the plays that he made, the eye-popping throws, everyone's anxious, I think, to see more of him and what he can do with this Alabama offense. But I also think, while some people are, I was having a conversation last night, and this gentleman was telling me, well, Taulia Tagovailoa is not his brother. I'm not sure that he was kind of down on the entire 2019 quarterback cycle. To me, while he's not as tall as Tua And while they may be slightly different styles, I do not discount Taulia Tagovailoa. I know you watched him last year. I certainly did. He impressed me every time. And I just think when you look at the Tagovailoas, both of them, they have a special, intangible about them that people want to follow. I think they both have elite arm talent. And the most overrated thing for me, the two things, is one, arm strength, though Taulia certainly has enough of that in spades. But I just think really, especially with the way you're seeing college football and professional football evolve, the height aspect is overrated too. Plus, you've made a great point in talking about Taulia reshaping his body and still growing.
Well, I mean, a young kid maturing. I mean, his body's thinned out. He's leaned out over the last year. He's muscled up a little bit. And, again, he's gotten a little bit taller. I know Mark Freeman, the head coach at Thompson, tells me he's right at 6 feet tall, so that wouldn't put him, much shorter than Tua, which is obviously tall enough. I mean, there's got to be probably shorter than that. But, everybody I talk to, and again, I've watched him, Drew, and sometimes it's difficult to tell from these tapes. You watch the huddle tape and the other tapes that you see, and it's always kind of you almost have to see them more in person, and then, I really get a better idea when I start watching them throw here, obviously. But, everybody I talk to, Drew, says that he's the right-handed version of Tua, basically. And again, it's kind of hard to believe because Tua is an extraordinarily gifted player, but there's a lot of people that think Leah's there with him in terms of, the things that he can do as a quarterback, just right-handed.
Yeah, I think he's, the thing that just impressed me so much, because everyone knows June Jones knows QBs, and he was on a somewhat of a football sabbatical after getting let go at SMU and back in Hawaii, and he requested to be Taulia's offensive coordinator in high school and just wanted to work with him one-on-one. He set a passing record, nearly throwing for 4,000 yards that year in high school at a rival high school of course, of St. Louis's, which was, of course, Tua's school. But he felt like that he's gone on record as saying he thinks Taulia is going to be a first-round pick as well. And that's all I need to know because, June Jones, as you know, Rodney, has wherever he's been on whatever level, and he's now in the CFL with the Hamilton Tiger Cats as head coach, but wherever he's been, Rodney, at Hawaii, SMU, or in the National Football League as the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons and with the Houston Oilers, wherever he's been, his offenses have been very productive, and so has his quarterbacks.
You're exactly right. I mean, he does a great job. I mean, you look when he was the head coach at Hawaii and Timmy Chang and all those quarterbacks that he had out there, they were all really good and put up big numbers, and he knows what he's looking at. Again, June Jones called Tua a long time ago before people really thought it would be possible that he could come here and challenge for the position. He said it. He said Tua would eventually win the job. And not that he has done that yet, but he certainly appears in a great position to do it. And June Jones obviously knows what he's looking at. And I do know that he, like you said, he's very high on Taulia as well. So, if you look at Alabama's quarterback situation, Drew, as you start looking long range, it looks pretty good.
It certainly is exciting, Rodney. You're right about that. And as we close the conversation on Taulia, what do you make? And I know there's been some angst among the fan base about Taulia visiting Tennessee and continuing to visit other schools because, as we know, until they sign that national letter of intent, recruiting never stops within a class. But what do you make of Taulia and his commitment to the University of Alabama?
I think it's solid. I know that he is still making those visits, and there's people at Tennessee that think they have a legitimate shot. I know that there's people running stories on the LSU website that he's their number one guy and they've got a shot, or so forth and so on. And, again, I just have to assume that right now he's solidly committed to Alabama. I will say this, Drew, with all the stuff coming out of Tennessee and some of the confidence that they seem to think they have a shot. I mean, if you're a quarterback and you're going to pick a school and you're a top player, I think one of the key things is, what do I have around me? What do I have around me in terms of coaching? What do I have around me in terms of talent and all of those things? And I mean, if you're a guy and you see all the weapons that they recruited out of Alabama, all the offensive linemen, all the running backs, all the ends, all the wide receivers, and then the defense that you know they're going to put on the field every year, I mean, you're almost guaranteed success. I mean, it's just kind of up to you. You're going to have the coaching. You're going to have all the players around you. You're going to play in big games. You're going to win a lot of games. You're going to compete for championships and probably going to win a championship. So, I mean, you're in a way, you're if you've got an opportunity to play in this versus, you know, a place that maybe is a little downtrodden right now, you're kind of taking a risk. That's the way I look at it.
And Rodney, I wanted to further kind of expound, not of course, not really on the quarterback situation, but this Alabama football team, you know, as a whole, and kind of, you know, where they're standing, because I think everyone's really excited about it. And I started off our program, and I went back to something that I said on Twitter, and I know you've been very outspoken in what you think of the young man, but am I wrong to think that Jalen Waddle could you know, make the just a huge. I know this wide receiver core is deep and talented, but that he could be as good as any of them, even as a true freshman this year at Alabama, and make a huge impact?
I think he's extraordinarily gifted. I won't be surprised if he does come in and compete really early on, early on. I think he's so versatile. He can do so many different things. He's a natural, you know, football player. Probably going to be a slot receiver. I think he could be just really dangerous there. But also, Drew, I think he brings another element where he's a natural punt returner, natural kick returner. I think he, you know, again, sometimes you get a young guy back there and it takes a little while in terms of getting adjusted. But I think that Jalen Waddle could be a difference maker pretty soon, doing things, you know, in the kick returner game. I really do. And I think he's going to be an exciting player. I'm really excited about Jalen Waddle.
I really are. I think I am as well. And then I made the statement about Patrick Surtain, and Rodney, I think you would agree with me that Minka is one of the all-time greats at Alabama. We haven't seen kids with his mindset, the kind of unique toughness and football IQ, just the combination of things that led him to become such a force at Alabama without even enrolling early and being a 3-year starter and playing so many just unbelievable roles for Alabama as a leader on the football team, and of course being so versatile, and really by the time he was a junior, mastering the secondary, able to just about play all 5 to 6 positions because of his knowledge and his just unique talent. But is Patrick Surtain the same kind of guy? Or where would you? I said I thought he would make maybe a bigger impact at the corner position, because I really think Shyheim Carter may be being undervalued at the star position. But where do you see Patrick Surtain fitting in?
Well, I just think he's versatile. I think he could probably play any spot back there in that secondary. I mean, he's got good eyes, he's got good speed, he's a physical player. He's got a lot of tools. I mean, he's been coached by his dad, who was an NFL player. I think he's really smart. So I think he's got a lot of those attributes that are going to help him get on the field pretty early. And plus the fact that Alabama has some needs back there, losing all those players. Now, I'm not going to compare anybody to Minka. I mean, that guy was, you know, extraordinarily special. And I don't know. Surtain may, you know, be right up there on that level, but you know, I'd like to see him play a little bit first. But you know, he does have a lot of tools, Drew, and I think all these young players that they brought in the secondary, you're talking about Patrick Surtain, Joshua Jobe, who I think is really a guy who, when you talk about man-on-man skills, coverage skills, he's got it. I mean, he's like glue. Now, again, he's got a lot to learn about the system and all of those things, different coverages and so forth, but if you stick him on a guy, he's pretty much glue. I think he's a lockdown corner prospect. So you've got him, Surtain, Jalen Armour-Davis, who I understand is doing really well in their summer work. Mobile got a chance to be an outstanding player. We know about Savion Smith. He was here in the spring, the JUCO transfer, former 5-star recruit that went to LSU. He did fantastic, I think, in the spring, a guy that's showing a lot of promise. And then, of course, Eddie Smith is the most underrated probably player they brought in, one of the most underrated players they brought in this class out of Slidell, Louisiana, who I think has got a chance to be a fantastic player as well. So all those young players, I think, are going to have an opportunity to compete, maybe have roles in the secondary this year.
I think this secondary group was probably the best in the country, and I agree, Rodney. Much needed and a great talent infusion for Alabama. Well, we appreciate the time as always here in Tuscaloosa on Tide 102.9. Let everybody know where they can connect with you, and of course your outstanding website, the best value when it comes to nuts and bolts and the best information out there on the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, Drew, at TiderInsider.com, it's only $48 a year. That's just $4 a month. You can get access with your credit card right now, or if you prefer, there's an address there to send a check, and that gives you access to our premium information as well as our forums where it's nonstop on there with exchange of information and discussion and all of those things about Alabama, not only football, but all sports, recruiting, and all of those things. Again, it's TiderInsider.com. It's only $48 a year.